Stevenson Manners, author of the recently released book, The Father, Son, and Offspring, The Enchanting Story of Nevis Cricket 1945 to 2023. Good morning, Mr. Manners, and welcome to Good Morning, SKN.
Hi, good morning. What a pleasure to come to you from Gingerland, Nevis, on what promises to be a glorious week. So happy to start off the week with Good Morning, SKN.
Oh, and it's our pleasure having you here. So we will begin with the title of the book. Why this title, and why 1945 to 2023? Why did you pick this particular time period?
Well, here's the book. Ivan in Living Color, available on Amazon. And a lot of people have asked that question, why the Father, Son, and Offsprings? There's a gentleman called Johnny Howell. He would have been 120 years old at his last birthday on October 2nd. He is the father of Nevis cricket. In fact, the pavilion at the E.T. Willick Park is named after him. He was a Charlestown businessman, first captain of Nevis in 1949, and he played until he was 49 years of age and captained Nevis for 12 years, from 1939 to 1951. But because he was a businessman, he had resources at his fingertips. He ran a lumber yard in Charlestown. So in the days when the E.T. Willick Park, then Go Park, was not a glorious facility, and it still not is, he used his personal resources to give it an uplift, a facelift for fencing and all that. Beyond that, he took Nevis teams to places like St. Martin, St. Eustatius, Tortola, St. Thomas, St. Croix, to grow the game in what were called goodwill tours. So he fathered the game of cricket. And so Johnny Howell is the acknowledged father of Nevis cricket. And then because of the work he had done, in 1973, El Camido Tonito Willett, after whom the park is now named, became the first player from Nevis and the first from the Leeward Islands to play Test cricket for the West Indies. It was a phenomenal feat nearly 50 years ago because there was a lot of insularity. You could call it cricket apartheid, because only players from the Big Four, Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, and Guyana, played for the West Indies. So imagine a gentleman, 36 from an island, 36 square miles, about 11,000 persons, very weak cricketing institutions and infrastructure, and yet he was the first to break through ahead of people like Andy Roberts, Viv Richards, Richie Richardson, Keith Atherton, Stuart Williams. So he's the son. He benefited from the groundwork which Johnny Howell had laid. And because of him, 6 other countries, 6 other divisions have also played for the West Indies. In Derek Parry, Keith Atherton, Stuart Williams, Carl Tuckett, Ronako Morton, and Kyron Powell. There is no place in the world so small, with limited population, which has produced so many Test cricketers. And so Nevis is a very special place where cricket is concerned. So what I did is to look at the evolution of the game of cricket in Nevis. Now, throughout the world, during World War II, there was a lull in the game, which was, of course, given to us by the British, our colonizers. And after the war ended in 1945, that's when the game really took off, got greater structure, at cup matches, etc. And of course, I went all the way to the present, because next week marks the 50th anniversary since Willett became the first Leeward Islander in first division to play for the West Indies. So a number of celebrations are in train. Last Monday, I launched an exhibition in partnership with the Nevis Public Library, using the pictures, the research from my book to partner with the library. And they're having a month-long exhibition for Black History Month. And next Thursday, which will be the date, March 9th, 50 years to the day, there's a big gala being planned for the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park, where it's a sold-out event already. Players and participants are coming from Antigua, St. Kitts, Montserrat, Anguilla, the Virgin Islands, and further afield. So that's why I look at that stretch. It's a period of 78 years of the glorious game being played in Nevis in an organized fashion.
All right, sir. I do have to ask you this question. In your words, the book looks at the good, the bad, and the ugly about cricket in Nevis. I heard you speak of a lot of good just now. I want to delve into some of the bad and perhaps some of the ugliness that you uncovered in your research and from your own experiences as well.
Well, the book doesn't just look at the game as cricket, as played in the field, because cricket, wherever it is played, encourages social and political dialogue, also cultural expression and resistance. So, for instance, Nevis has always used the game of cricket to get an upper hand of the sister islands in Kitts. It's conceived in Nevis that Nevis tend to be treated a little less than the bigger islands. It happens in Antigua and Barbuda, Trinidad and Tobago. Remember the last campaign, federal campaign, the Premier of Nevis talked about fair share. Nevisians have always felt that they've got, the bad end of the stick. And so Nevis has used cricket always to get the upper hand of St. Kitts, to send them political and social messages. You're probably too young, but TDC is celebrating 50 years. And one of the first things TDC did was to organize what were called Berridge Howell matches in honor of Howell, the father of Nevis cricket, and two persons on St. Kitts, Paget and Edgar Berridge, who could qualify as the fathers of Kittitian cricket. And they organized that. 11 games were played, and when it finished in the 80s, Nevis had dominated St. Kitts 8-3. Another ugly point in Nevis cricket was when Derek Parry, an off-spinner who had played for the West Indies, found himself out of work and went to apartheid South Africa. It was a really bad time for Nevis. We got bad press because, of course, people were fighting then to free Africa, South Africa, from apartheid. And 21 of our cricketers ventured there. It was not a good look. Personally, I feel that by going there, they helped to fast forward the decline and the end of apartheid, which came 10 years after. But that was no question an ugly point. And of course, in 1969, when Willett came onto the scene, a match was abandoned in Antigua because Nevis was trying to beat Antigua in Antigua for the first time. Viv Richards, the greatest batsman of all time, was also playing for the first time. And he got dismissed on 3 occasions for a duck, but he was a childhood prodigy, and everybody wanted him to do well, and they rioted. Eugene Walwyn, who was then the Attorney General of St. Kitts Nevis, the first Attorney General of the Associated States of St. Kitts Nevis, was also the cricket boss. And the Nevis team had to be flown out of Antigua via charter organized by then Premier Robert Thatcher. So those were ugly, ugly scenes. So we've had good times, we've had bad times, and I didn't leave anything out of this book. I put everything under the microscope.
Obviously, there was a lot of information, a lot of research. I'm only assuming that also it's a testament to the time that it took and the attention to detail that you paid in writing this book. Can you tell us about that writing process for you?
Yeah, well, actually, this process started during COVID lockdown. Of course, we all had nothing to do. We would go to the refrigerator, get a drink, get something to eat, get fat. And I decided that this was the space and time that I needed to properly write this book. So it's something I wanted to do for a long time because I figured Nevis's cricketing history is so rich. But COVID afforded me the opportunity to begin to do the research. On the days that we got out, after 7 days and 5 days, I would go to the Nevis Sports Museum, which is the greatest cricketing and sporting idea that Nevis has ever seen, introduced in 2005 by then Minister of Sports Lofton Brandy. We're not good on Nevis, and I gather in St. Kitts and in the Caribbean, in keeping records of our achievements. But he put in place the Nevis Sports Museum, and that was a reservoir of information for me. Spencer Howell, who played on the first Nevis team in 1949, he was a fount of knowledge, but he died about a year and a half ago before the book came to light. And so memories have begun to fade. People have died, but I spoke to cricketers, people who ran the Cricket Association, people who were alive during that period of time, etc., and garnered a lot of information on it. Now, on March 9th, 2022 is when I started to pull this all together. And I used a technique that I got from my son. When he was doing his overseas exams, I would go to his room and he would have sticker pads all over his room, outlining his goals, what he wanted to achieve. And so I decided on March 9th, 2022, 1 year out, to begin to tell people what I was doing. So I would make Facebook posts. I would do a bit of a countdown. And so most of the work was done in the last year. I concluded my manuscript on December 31st. I'm not an Amazon man, so I handed it off to my children, who are all gurus. They did the upload, the formatting and editing done. And lo and behold, by mid-January, the book was ready. And but I held it back. I held it back until December 6th, 3 weeks ago to the day. Why did I hold it back? It was the 40th birthday of Willett's first son, Benito Willett. Okay. And part of what I want this book to do is to have generational pass down. Those who were too young to know what was happening, that this book will provide that information. That's why I've given copies to the Nevis Public Library and the Nevis Sports Museum and other deserving people. And so it's very important that we do that. Another reason why I chose February 6th is because it's the birthday of Robert Nesta Marley, Bob Marley. In 1973, the same year when Willett made the side, he brought out a song called Get Up, Stand Up. It was a call to action. It's a bit of a national anthem for Black people everywhere. And I decided that I would be the Nevisian who would get up, stand up, and write the history of Nevis. And I'm so happy that I've done so.
And I am happy that you did. So let's talk about the feedback. For those who would have read your book already, what are they saying to you, Mr. Manners?
Well, a day last week, I got a very amazing picture out of Boston, Massachusetts. A Boston, Massachusetts woman of Nevisian parentage sent me a picture of her 85-year-old mother reading my book. I couldn't believe it. People abroad have been using this book as a connection to their homeland. They live in the diaspora. They're always looking for connection with home. And this reminds them of the great old days, because as I said, cricket has been on a decline, not only in Nevis, the Federation, but in the Caribbean. West Indies are not winning too many matches. So this gives them an opportunity for nostalgia. A lot of persons overseas are sending me messages, pictures of when they receive their book or when they're ordering, because it's available on Amazon. Here in Nevis, it got off to a bit of a slow start, and I'll tell you why. Nevisians and Kittians too, because I've been getting a lot of calls from St. Kitts as well, are used to authors having the book in their hand. I know, for instance, Willie Doe passed away, and I heard the author of that book on Win FM on the weekend, and he's the only person selling his book. It's not available in any bookstores. I don't even know if we have bookstores anymore. So my book is only available on Amazon, which was very handy. Amazon affords you the opportunity of doing all the printing for you, so you don't have to pay for that. They give you the platform to promote it, and of course there's a fee. So it would be foolish of me, for instance, to be allowing Amazon to represent me in this, order the books from them, have to pay freight on a couple hundreds of books, and then try to on-sell to people on the island. But everybody knows Amazon. It's the everything store. So in the first week or so, everybody would call, WhatsApp, meet me in the street. When can I get a copy? I want it autographed. That's not possible. I'm not bringing in books except for a dozen I brought in to gifts to people. But they're getting into the Amazon thing, and the book is going very well. I have been interviewed, for instance, on a radio station in Connecticut. I was on Mary's show live. I'm going on Chris Collins' show in Sheffield, England on March the 12th. I've been on several media houses, Island T, on Win FM, and now I'm happy to be talking to the people of St. Kitts. I've been on ZIZ Sports with Earl Smitten and Theo Park. So the word is going far and wide, and I keep posting. I keep posting all the time. The book is getting a lot of traction.
I can't help but wonder, sir, if a lot of what you put into that book and the very fact that you wrote it and the way that you have was informed by your time as a sports correspondent. I mean, your resume is quite impressive. You've worked at media houses like Kind of Sports, CMC Sports Barbados, and Sports Max Jamaica.
Sports Max in Jamaica. Well, I can say this. I've been sort of the voice of Nevis cricket for a long time. So whenever there were Shell Shield matches, regional matches, other touring teams, these media houses got me to do the reporting. But as I said, there has been no cricket of note, no first-class cricket for the last 13 years. So it has been a bit of a slow time. But I was a cricket commentator in the glory days of Nevis cricket as well. So from the 70s onwards, I lived that period, so I know it well. But going backwards to the 1940s, I had to get people who were alive and people who were aware of what is happening. Writing this was an extremely gratifying experience. It took me, as I said, about a year to pull things together. The name, by the way, didn't come until close to the end. I realized that there was a thread going through the whole thing. Johnny Howell, the father, came, led to Antonio, to El Camino, Tonito Willett, and then Willett led to other people as well. But there were people in between. For instance, Theodore Ted Hobson, who is a lawyer, QC, was the first division to make a Leeward Islands team in 1950. They went on a goodwill tour to Bermuda, which of course is the oldest British outpost in the Caribbean. And then in 1953, 4 players, Ted Hobson, Austin Eddy, the father of Victor Eddy, Stanley Thompson, the wicketkeeper from St. Kitts, and Hubert and Tannison from Antigua, went to Guyana to try out in front of the West Indian selectors. By the way, Guyana is the oldest cricketing country in the Caribbean, even though it is not in the Caribbean. It was introduced there by British merchants, plantation owners, security people, soldiers, and then it spread up to Trinidad, Barbados, and Guyana. So other people along the way, there's a man called Harold Walters who died 2 years ago. In March of 1965, he became the first Leeward Islander to take 5 wickets in an innings. It's the same year that West Indies became champions for the first time. And he, bowling against Australia at Warner Park, St. Kitts, took 5 for 72. People tell me that the boat was so packed on that day. The only comparable day was August 1st, 1970, when the boat went down. And then there was Livingston Sargent, 1968, the father of Trent Sargent of Win FM, and he's known as the father of Nevisian batsmanship, because in 1968, he became the first Nevisian to make 100 runs against a touring team. He was only 20. He made 127 at Antigua. Edgar Gilbert of Molyneux St. Kitts shepherded him to 100. So Nevis had a lot of first in Leeward Islands cricket. Let me tell you, Leeward Islands cricket started in 1913. That's 110 years ago. St. Kitts, Nevis, and Anguilla played as one. There was Antigua, Barbuda, Montserrat, and Dominica, which at the time was part of the British Leeward Islands, but in 1940, it became part of the British Windward Islands. That's how Nevis got in. In those first years of Nevis, of Leeward's cricket, divisions only got token selections. Most of the people came from St. Kitts, and Willa never got a look in. And so when Nevis came on stream in 1969, in 1949, in 24 years, we had produced a test cricketer. It took Antigua 61 years before they produced the test cricketer in 1974 through Andy Roberts. And St. Kitts, after 110 years of Leeward's cricket, has not yet produced a male test cricketer, even though a young lady from the Sandy Point Secondary School recently toured India, Miss Claxton. So Nevis has been punching way above its weight in the time it has been in regional, Leeward's, and international cricket.
Mr. Manners, you mentioned that cricket is somewhat of a dying sport on Nevis, or that it has not played a big match in recent times. Why is that so, and what can be done to revive the game of cricket on Nevis?
Well, Nevis was the perceived center of cricket in the Federation. I think it was viewed more as the footballing capital. We didn't play too many sports over here. But it was a brilliant move by Prime Minister Denzel Douglas, Ricky Skerritt, and Charles Wilkin in 2005 to decide to develop Warner Park. They got a $40 million grant from the Taiwanese government to do that because they were looking forward to hosting matches for World Cup 2007. They did so well. It's a small venue, very compact, always packed, and high-scoring games, that they have become like one of the must-visit places whenever there are touring teams coming here. That worked to the detriment of Nevis cricket because our leader then, Vance Amory, showed very little interest in benefiting from some of the free money that was going around. Antigua got free money, Guyana got free money, Jamaica got free money. So we didn't make the investment, and as a result of that, we have suffered. What can be done? Well, cricket is back now, and the crowds are coming back. But the young people have been diverted to other sports because of cable television, and they no longer have the passion. In an interview with Curtis Morton, which I shared to my Facebook page this morning, when the exhibition opened, Curtis asked Willett the same question. Willett taught for many years as a sports officer at the Charlestown Primary School, the biggest primary school in the island. And he said he's alarmed. The guys in the higher grades, 5, 6, 4, are not playing the game, even though they have a lovely ground adjoining the facility. The young generation is not prepared to put in the hard work. To use Willett's analogy, they're more into the bling, the flashy shades, the dangling chains, and the paraphernalia that goes along with cricket. Also, we have not told the story well enough about the people who have gone before. That's why I said the Sports Museum is a brilliant idea. Also, and I heard the discussion a lot from former cricketers while I was in the park last week for 2 matches in the Leeward's tournament. Too many of the divisions who have gone on before are not passing on to the new generation, which is very sad. We've become a very selfish society.
Wow.
Well, in that vein, sir, I imagine that read of your book will ignite passion that once existed in Nevis and even create new interest in the sport, because you seem to chronicle well the events.
Yeah, well, the problem is my mentor, Whitman Brown, who wrote 4 books on the Christina disaster, have not been happy over all these years that his books chronicling the worst maritime disaster in the history of the English-speaking Caribbean has not made its way or made their way into the school's curriculum. We're still talking about Alexander Hamilton. He played his role. Born in Nevis, left at age 8, became the first Secretary of the Treasury. He's on the $10 bill. Last year, we erected a bronze statue on the grounds of the Museum of Nevis History. People here were still telling us about Fanny Nisbet and Horatio Nelson, because he came here to water his ships and married a Nevisian woman. Our history is taught in school still focuses a lot on European stuff. I was very happy on Friday night, or was it Saturday night?
Oh, we seem to have technical difficulty.
Oh.
Sir, can you hear us?
And in choral speaking, and in the first segment, they had to recite the words from a calypso, King Ginger's Right to Right History. Actually, that's the theme I have been using myself to promote this book. This is a call to action. Okay, Horatio Nelson watered chipped here, married a white woman. Alexander Hamilton was born here, left when he was 8. Willett will be 70 on May the 1st and has given 54 years of his life to Nevis cricket. Yet there's no monument to what he has achieved. I've been calling, for instance, for a bronze statue to be built at Grove Park.
Well, sir,
about 2 weeks ago, say it again.
I hate to interrupt you, but we are just about out of time for the interview. But that is a very solid point that you were making, and perhaps we can continue this discussion at another point in time. But I do appreciate your time, and I appreciate your words, and thank you so much for the book that chronicles the legacy that we can look forward to sharing with future generations, all about cricket and the experiences on Nevis.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Good way to start my week. Here it is. The Father, Son, and Offspring.